Genshin Impact. Wait, didn't I already do this? Despite believing I had properly moved past this monstrosity of a video game, I seem to have developed a small, malevolent spirit problem.
Morning. Wanna go on a jog?
Opinions. I have them, you have them, we all have them. On the Genshin Impact video, there are currently 2,549 of them. So, at the potential expense of shamelessly amassing views through drama and clickbait, I wanted to respond to some of the comments on said Genshin Impact video. Both the people that raise interesting points, and the people that vehemently attempt to defend a billion-dollar corporation selling anime gambling. Mostly the second one. With that being said, please don't harass anyone that left any comments like these. I mean, that should go without saying, but considering the discourse around these types of games, I'm not looking to start a war in my comments section. God knows I learned not to make a light-hearted capitalism joke in the comments section of a League of Legends video. If you can't keep yourself in control, then I recommend do not play. Like, it is a gacha game and it's known, but people blame their uncontrollable behavior on the game. That's what ticks them off. Right off the bat, I want to talk about Breath of the Wild, because I definitely got more than a few comments about it. In previous videos, I've talked about the dangers of over-comparing games to one another, so I will admit that I was a bit overzealous. However, I think some people put too much weight on the sheer mention of it, despite me quickly dropping the idea after mentioning that the game really isn't that similar. I mostly brought it up because Genshin did attract a lot of comparisons upon release, and going into it, Breath of the Wild was fresh in my mind. It's true that for the first 10 or 20 hours of my experience, I did feel those comparisons weighing rather heavily, but as Genshin transitioned from its early open world to a dungeon-centric RPG formula, the similarities began to fade. Sure, Breath of the Wild didn't invent climbing and gliding mechanics, but it's clear that Genshin's implementation wasn't inspired by fucking Pilotwings or something. It takes a lot of people to make these games, and they have to be able to make a living too. If you don't like it, don't play it. It's that simple. No one is forcing you to play. Yes, game development is incredibly difficult, people should be paid for their work, and the estimated production cost of Genshin was around $100 million. But that doesn't defend the manipulative aspects of the game. The video game industry is so massive nowadays that it is indeed possible to sell a game without this type of business model, but it's become the norm because with it, they made their development costs back in less than a month. When it comes to the second part of the comment, attempting to be a game critic and analyzing the mechanics I believe make games engaging without being manipulative means I gotta talk about things I don't like sometimes. If I only made videos about games I 100% adore, it'd be harder to explain my frame of reference or see where some games succeed and others fail. I definitely hear the if you don't like it then leave argument in a lot of areas of life, but critically engaging with something is much more interesting and impactful to me than believing Genshin will somehow disappear or the video game industry will magically fix itself if one person just starts voting with their wallet. Also, it's just fun to rant about how companies sell unregulated gambling to kids, you know? The game is amazing. Sure, it's designed to make money, but it's no one's fault but the spenders if they spend too much and can't control themselves. Someone's gotta defend the casinos from those greedy individuals with mental health problems. Yeah, looking out for the little guys. The whales get the short end of the stick with how easy the game is and how unnecessary the gacha characters and weapons are. Even though I specifically mentioned that it's not about the characters being better, a lot of people still wanted to chime in with, you can play the whole game with the free characters. But my argument was never about optimization. Dropping a hail-launching skating rink seems way cooler than spawning some tiny icicles, and throwing a giant meteor that turns enemies to stone looks a little more impactful than spawning an awkward rock arena. Yes, with enough game knowledge and grinding, you can clear all of the Spiral Abyss without spending money. But the game is more than successful enough to show that people want to be overpowered and have fun. That's like the whole thing with action combat games. For the main part of the game, which I think some late game players tend to ignore, I had a lot more fun with Yanfei, Diluc, and Hu Tao when I needed a fire option than I did with Amber in the beginning. I can explain. I also received a handful of comments disagreeing with my criticism of the strategy and difficulty overall, and while my thoughts come from the position of someone who only spent 2 months with the game, which is plenty of time in my eyes, I just don't think Genshin offered an interesting challenge. Team composition was often brought up, but what I think certain people don't take into account is that you have to engage over a long period of time with the gacha system to experience some of the true strategy the element system holds. If every character was freely unlockable and it was necessary to figure out which ones to use for each battle, then it might have piqued my interest, but the game clearly isn't looking to do that, except for the neat limited time event that lets you try every character with a full build. Bet that doesn't have any ulterior motives. Instead, the world level system puts the responsibility of balancing the game into the hands of the player, reinforcing Genshin as a numbers game instead of being anything intrinsically difficult. Plus, there's also the issue of time investment. Since I'm not a fan of wasting hundreds of hours mindlessly grinding artifacts and experience, I ran the same 1 or 2 teams for almost every piece of content, as getting a new character and grinding them to level 70 or 80 or 90 takes upwards of 5 to 10 to 20 hours. In my 100+ hours with the game, I didn't even get close to maxing out a single one. Nice.
Alright, garbage.
Genshin has one of the lowest amounts of necessary grinding amongst mobile games that have grinding mechanics at all. It's just that you are too used to playing without them. Yeah. Man, these arguments are gonna turn me into Cranky Kong for real this time, dude. I get that plenty of people like mindless gameplay and grinding. I've played my fair share of Final Fantasy XIV, and I do like popping some balloons, but most of the time when I play games, I'm looking to have some fun, not work a fucking 9 to 5. Recently, I've been thinking a lot about the value many gamers place on the concept of time. Games are often discussed and reviewed with hour counts at the forefront, and sure, it makes sense for a game that actually uses its time wisely, like, I don't know, Breath of the Wild. But in general, the concept of getting my money's worth has never really been a concern for me. Honestly, I would have paid more for Sayonara Wild Hearts and I beat that shit in like 2 hours. I think people are willing to put up with a lot of mediocrity if it means they can get more time out of something, especially if the game is free. My playtime easily exceeded 100 hours and I didn't even max out a single character or finish an artifact build. And while yes, endgame players have managed to get upwards of 500 to 1,000 hours out of Genshin, some without spending a penny, I doubt every moment was exciting and engaging. When games get to that length, I often feel as if they're wasting my time. As an amateur poker player and a libertarian, too much negativity. This video is almost a total mess. No, that's my other video. Open world games are a mess, where I also talked shit on Genshin. You make some good points. Thanks. But sorry, you are outrageously wrong about other points. Oh, I should have known. You don't get to talk about bad game design when you don't even understand why you can't simply freely unlock some areas in the map that are tied to lore. Oh, I get that it's all lore related, I just don't like it. The concept of a fully explorable world is frustrating when the correct way to explore said world is to accept every blue side quest you see and start completing them one by one until you find a way to walk through the island shrouded in fog, or get into that secret cavern you saw, or finally disable the invisible walls and constant damage in the center of a giant mountain. Just kinda limits the idea of, hey look, there's stuff everywhere, go find it at your own pace. We won't strike you down if you try to cross the ocean. Gacha is bad, but act like your precious $60 price tag is some kind of holy grail is just hypocritical. 80% of the population on Earth won't be able to touch that. Are they lower life than your kind? What? Developed countries are built upon blood and tears of the third world. If you are not sympathizing, you are oppressing. I will never understand how people bash MiHoYo for even the tiniest screw-up, yet other companies get the biggest of passes. Activision, a legitimately greedy company that makes the exact same game year after year, still gets praise. I don't know if you've seen any of the news lately, but Nintendo, a company that has an atrocious history of mistreating its fanbase, still gets praise. Meanwhile, MiHoYo donates a large sum of money to a goddamn school, and not even announcing it to the public is still taken as a PR stunt and is seen as manipulative, shady, and disgraceful by so many. Okay, I know this is just blatant deflecting to say, oh, but this thing is infinitely worse. Yeah, that. Definitely knew that was a term before today. But the video was never about Activision or Nintendo or MiHoYo's charity work. It's about Genshin Impact. I've made a video on Nintendo's shitty copyright practices already. Plus, just because other gacha games do it worse doesn't mean Genshin gets a pass for looking pretty, nor does donating to charity absolve a multi-billion-dollar corporation of all guilt. Otherwise, I'd be bowing down to every lottery company in the US. But legitimately saying Genshin Impact is not a game and should not be marketed as such is such an exaggeration of you just not liking the game. I don't think this is quite what I was going for. I just find it depressing that games made for players of all ages can contain gambling as a core mechanic, and all they have to do is slap a warning, "You can spend real money," on the front of the game. The laws and regulations surrounding microtransactions and in-game purchases differ from country to country, but in the United States, they're basically non-existent. Abuse of these systems has been seen time and time again, from Roblox's stock markets to CSGO skin trading to casino and slot machine apps, to recently, the new wave of play-to-earn schemes that make it really hard not to reply to every business email with NFT these nuts. The mindset that it's not the casino's fault, it's the gamblers, is spilling over even further into video games, a realm of entertainment that I care about a lot, and I'm still constantly put off hearing the caveat, yeah, you should try this really fun game as long as you're not weak-willed. Just ignore that entire subsection of the game, you financially unstable piece of shit. Love your videos and I'll keep watching. Oh, I hope you, thanks. What to do after a low-performing video? Damn, this guy's out the gate swinging for my kneecaps. I just wanted to make a review on SMT5, man. Yeah, shit talk a popular thing to get clicks. I've seen a lot of vids like this about Genshin, even in the most critical view of the game, they were never biased towards it. No reviews has ever complained about the exploration part of the game, and you've clearly started playing the game with preconceived bias. Not everyone is a gamer should be the first principle before. I got nothing. This was just funny. In short, you didn't know how to enjoy the game, and I declare this creator is just one of the I can't do this, man. I declare this creator is just one of the cringe guys in the world. He's not a pro gamer or head of gaming community that you believe him. I and 85% of the Genshin community recommends this game, which yells how good it is, and these awards and revenue data is proof that it is the best game in the whole world. I so desperately want to believe this is satire, but then I remember that Genshin Impact fans exist. So many of your points are blanket statements on your preferred gameplay loop or system, and you never really explain why you feel the way you feel. I don't know, I think I made enough references to Skinner boxes and rats pressing levers. Blanket statement number 4, story is boring. Story enjoyment is so subjective that why even bring it up? Do you love the story in every single game you like? No. I mean, not always, but if a narrative-driven RPG isn't gonna let me skip any dialogue and cutscenes, then the story better be worth my fucking time. Number 5, copying only bad parts of other games. Yeah, the Breath of the Wild weapon system is so fun. God, I love picking up a weapon that breaks after use. Well, do I have some news for you. They also went on about how Breath of the Wild's combat is comparatively shit because it's linear instead of Genshin's dynamic elemental system, but I think I've made enough of my point here. Ever bought cheap clothes? Some child labor factory probably made that. What? Ever owned any tech ever? Most likely made in really shitty work conditions and pay in a Chinese-owned factory. At least Genshin doesn't actively stop you from playing the game to tell you about the shop, except for that one time when it does. Just when I think Activision is gonna be the worst example, I get hit with "there is no ethical consumption under capitalism." They even let you playtest the characters, playtest the game, and hide nothing regarding gacha rates. That's the bare minimum. Having seen an actual critique of the game and actually having played the game myself, there's a lot of red flags here. What is this, a bad relationship? So far you only point out the negatives, which most are actually nitpicks, but fail to mention the actual positives, like for example the lore, the world, the actual characters, heck, even the combat. Alright, despite the fact that I complimented the world, the lore, the characters, and the music, this person is so confident in their opinion that they have decided positivity is the standard, with any negativity being a nitpick, and that a review is too biased or poorly made if it doesn't correctly rain praise on every feature they like. I said it already in the video, I totally understand that people love gameplay features I hate. I just don't write "I think" before every sentence because it'd probably activate the fight or flight response of my middle school English teacher. Start crossing out sections of my video in red pen. If you want an actual critique of Genshin, oh, there it is again. What does actual critique mean? I recommend Never Knows Best's critique of Genshin Impact. It's way less negative for nothing and doesn't fucking compare it to an actual AAA game like Zelda and not from the eyes of a Nintendo-tainted individual. Okay, ignoring the fact that Genshin Impact is absolutely a AAA game and may have had a higher development cost than Breath of the Wild, I've watched some of the review he mentioned and it heavily analyzes the initial story playthrough and artistic facets of the game. But since I also noticed many Genshin reviews don't discuss endgame grinding or the gacha aspects in as much detail, I wanted to give my thoughts on those parts of the experience. Wait, did he call me a Nintendo-tainted individual? I could continue to grab countless comments like this one, but so many of them boil down to bias and subjectivity, which just feels exhausting to cover when it comes to video essays. If I get something completely factually wrong or make assumptions without experiencing something, then I more so understand where comments are coming from. But saying that critiques are somehow supposed to be objective is just absurd. This is single-handedly the most common argument I see in response to any of my negative reviews. On just Genshin alone, there are probably over 100 comments that claim my review is too subjective or nitpicky because a lot of people enjoy certain features like the story or the grind or the gameplay or the gacha, and that's just my opinion, man. And I have nothing to say to that. That's what reviews are. I understand that I can come off as extremely jaded at times, and I'm sure a few of my points get lost in the exaggeration I use to make things funnier, but I feel like many Genshin reviews come from those unfamiliar with the genre, analyzing it from the perspective of a new, regular video game, or they're sponsored, but to me, the mobile game mechanics I spent several years unhealthily addicted to just soured the experience too much. As someone who has always used the self-control argument, I can concede that Genshin and most gacha games obviously take a lot of the innocence of playing video games out of the medium, and the fact that such obvious gambling is not regulated or monitored like traditional gambling is a very valid concern. Everyone wants your money in one way or another, with some being honest and others being a scam. But as an adult, I have to make smart financial decisions despite the deceitful attempts of others to entice me to spend my money, and if I fail to do so, and I have, that's my fault and I have to do better. This is a good comment. You know what? I'm gonna import Confetti Cannon 4K 60 FPS .mp4 just for you. At the end of the day, I know I'm just a tiny little YouTuber that can't affect much when it comes to the multi-billion-dollar gaming industry, but that's never been my goal. I'm not trying to somehow shut down the giant that is MiHoYo with a scathing expose, but I can at least yell into the void and have a few people listen, and maybe give them a laugh or a new outlook on something. My adventurer rank ended in the low 40s, but there are a hefty number of comments from those in the high 50s that have been playing from the start or maxed out all of their characters, and many of them share the sentiment that they loved Genshin in the beginning, but now just feel like they're sticking around waiting to rekindle that magic. Some even created entirely new accounts to do the story and exploration all over again, and that feels kinda unfortunate. Genshin entices players with an initial burst of excitement, bestowing upon them a massive open world with tons of things to discover, but then turns the majority of the experience into a repetitive grind to keep them around. I get that it's going to take MiHoYo a lot of time to develop each major expansion, but I just hate the concept of feeling the need to stick around every day to be ready for when that next big moment drops. It means that there isn't truly valuable, replayable content anymore. A game that I've been enjoying a lot recently that doesn't run into these issues as much is Final Fantasy XIV. There is a metric fuck ton of stuff to do in the time between major updates. Plus, it doesn't trick you into sticking around every day if you don't want to. Because it's built on a subscription model, you can cancel until there's something new, or you have the money to comfortably subscribe again, and you won't miss out on a banner or a limited time event that gives you a few crumbs of primo gems. I know that it's not completely free, but it feels like a much better trade-off than being manipulated by design. With that, I feel as if I've almost entirely exhausted my current thoughts on Genshin Impact, so if you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button to help me out. And if you'd like to support the videos I make, the best way to do that is over at my Patreon, which is linked in the description. I want to close this video out by saying that I enjoyed reading a majority of the comments, even if plenty of people don't agree with me. As long as I'm not being senselessly yelled at by anime fans, I like hearing about the reasons people find enjoyment in Genshin, or seeing players say they find our difference in opinions interesting, even if I hate it for the reasons they love it. That's the cool part about opinions. We can all discuss what we enjoy or don't enjoy, learn things from one another, and, point out malicious practices by corporations to better influence the future of entertainment. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, is that enough for you?
Hey, there's something strange over there.
Some agreeable points, but your argument mostly boils down to subjectivity and nitpick. Are you serious?